So now it's 10 o'clock. I see 18 participant has decided to join, and thank you everyone who has decided to join. That's really great. So the agenda for today is a recap from ISE. ISE is the fair in Barcelona, where you see all the latest gizmos and gadgets within the collaboration space, signage space, from sensors, IoT, and to home cinema. And I was there. Lars was there. I think you were there as well, Robert. I thought I saw you. And it was a really amazing event. So I thought, why not have us share the experience, share a bit of the news, the trends, and just on a more of a what do you call it, like a podcast kind of way, instead of having 1 hour of presentations. And I was supposed to do it all by myself, and then you decided to join, Lars. And I reached out and said, you're not going to be a participant. Obviously, you're going to be a speaker if you are participating in an event like this. And you agreed right away, which is fantastic. So thanks so much. And Robert, then I reached out to you and said, let's have a trio instead of a duo. And yeah, you guys were both so fast to agree to be on this. So thank you for that. But maybe some quick introductions. Maybe you first, Lars, for those of you who does not know you. I think everyone does, but anyways.
Yeah, I can do that. So my name is Lars. I'm based in Copenhagen, Denmark. My daily job is as a system engineer for HP Poly HP in the Nordics. Basically driving a lot of pre-sales work within the Microsoft Teams area. And then besides that, Microsoft is also kind of my passion and my hobby. So spending a lot of time on doing video and blogs about Microsoft, both from the technical perspective, but also simple user tips and tricks.
Yeah, and I've been following you for years, and you've been more or less the superstar in terms of the Danish Microsoft market. So that has been fantastic to follow you. I'm so pleased to hear. And then we have you, Robert, if you want to give a brief introduction.
Yeah, so first, great to be here, and thank you for setting this up. I think this is a great opportunity to do a recap and just reflect back, because time flies, and like 2 weeks ago, and it feels like ages ago. So I'm Robert. I'm based in Sweden, doing the partner technology strategist role at Microsoft for Teams Rooms devices. And that's a bit of a complex, perhaps, naming convention regarding that. But what I do in practice is that I have 15, 20 resellers and partners across EMEA who I care for, who I educate, make sure that they have the right competence, the right skill set regarding sales and technical stuff for Teams Rooms. Then I also work very closely with the vendors and companies like Poly HP or HP Poly or how do we say it? Yeah. It doesn't matter. We all know. So being closely with Lars and his colleagues and all the other ones that we have in the ecosystem. So really enjoying being a part of this part of the IT industry that has really been growing the last 3 years. I've been with Microsoft for 6.5 years now, so time flies.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining. Yeah, and my name is Kenneth. I'm from Co-Ideation. We are a small consultancy firm working in primarily adoption, training, building strategies around Microsoft and Teams. And we only focus on Microsoft Teams and collaboration. So that's our speciality. So I prepared a few slides here. And to everyone who's joined for the first time and who perhaps doesn't know me, I try to do a lot of the marketing stuff on my own, again, to get volume and be visible in the market. I think it's great to bring this kind of content to the market, and we do work quite rapidly when we do this. So we don't spend a lot of time preparing, and we don't spend a lot of time doing high production value and all of that. We think it's more interesting to bring insight, bring competence, and if something goes wrong, if something messes up, that's just the name of the game. So I hope you guys appreciate that way of working. So let's see if it works when I share. Because I prepared a few slides. I didn't prepare a lot because I didn't think we wanted to do that. I would rather have a conversation. So let's see. There we go. So thumbs up if guys are seeing the slides. I meant the emoji thumbs up, Robert.
Feels like this.
Yeah. Hey,
I have a Stream Deck, so it's very fast to do a thumbs up as well.
Yeah. I'm seeing it.
So that would maybe we need to go into that as well, Robert, because Stream Deck and Microsoft Teams, that's just like a cliffhanger for later on.
Oh yeah.
We can come back there.
Yeah, it's quite fun. It's my first time using Teams webinar, and one of the first things I noticed was in Danish, when you get the confirmation mail in Danish, it said something like, we have registered that you are attending and your cancellation is now confirmed, instead of we have confirmed that you are attending. So there was a bit of a misspell, but I sent something to the support team, so I think they're going to change that. In English, it works perfectly. So I guess we're first movers when it comes to using webinar and not Teams live events. Yeah, so just really quick on co-ideation for those of you who don't know who we are. So we are, as I said, a consultancy firm. We work primarily on Microsoft and Teams, or exclusively actually on Microsoft and Teams. And what we're trying to do in the market is basically try to raise the awareness and raise the quality of people who are interacting with Microsoft. So we do training of partners, we do guest speaking at many events, we talk about hybrid meetings, and we try to bring in partners who know stuff about this. So just to give a brief couple of examples, we just had 2 summits about a hybrid workplace, and we showed a lot of pictures, a lot of presentations in regarding hybrid workplace, and we even had Nick Bloom, who's a Stanford professor, showcasing the latest data in this. So someone is saying that they might not see the presentation.
Mm-hmm. So try to reshare.
And someone else is saying that they are seeing the presentation. So I'm going to stop my sharing and let me try to share again.
That's always the fun part of doing live.
Yeah, but you know what? It is what it is. Let's see if it works better now. So at least in my window, I'm seeing something being shared, and I see a few thumbs ups. So, and people are saying it's back again. Perfect. Yeah, so we are trying to do what we can in the Nordics to share our insights, share what we know, and take in guest speakers who know a lot about hybrid workplace, both from a technology perspective, but also from a people perspective. So this is from Stockholm, where we had Nina Rapp, who's the, I think, head of modern workplace in Sweden, and we had Nick Bloom, who is fantastic. He's Stanford professor, been working on hybrid workplace for 20 years. I don't know what you talked about in regards to hybrid workplace 20 years ago, but it was so interesting to hear the latest and greatest. We also do a lot on LinkedIn, so please follow us on LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel. I think we broadcasted 11 or 12 videos from all the different MTR booths at ISE. So for everyone who was curious to see what is going on at ISE, we tried to give some insights there. So topic for today is trends and technology, and the first kind of subject I wanted to talk about is what it actually looks like right now for Microsoft Teams, because Jesus Christ, a development since I was at ISE last time. I was at ISE in 2020, and in 2019 I was there as well. And then I actually skipped the last year. But this is a picture from 2019, where Cisco was showcasing the latest and greatest in Cisco Spark, and most of the booth had Starleaf, PegZip. They had all the meeting-to-meeting vendors there, and they were showcasing their own stuff. But this year, the Cisco booth, I haven't seen that much of MTR systems and Teams logos. It's a completely different ball game being at ISE this year. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask you guys if you notice that difference as well. Like, Microsoft Teams is clearly the focus of attention in the collaboration space in ISE. Or what do you guys think?
Well, I guess I'm a bit biased here, of course. I'm seeing Microsoft logos everywhere. This was my third ISE, so I attended the last one in Amsterdam, and then these 2 ones in Barcelona. And I can see the same change of just being of those 3 ones. The first one was before pandemic, so we had we had a booth, of course, and we had a lot of our vendors being there, but it was, as you say, everyone was there from every type of technology, and really having these islands of different ecosystem, and it started to change at the last ISE in Barcelona in May, where Still, we had all the other vendors there, but we had more Microsoft logos. We had more Microsoft coming into our vendors' booth as one of the prioritized, I would say, ways to collaborate. I mean, Paul, you have multiple ways of doing things, and so has many of our other vendors. But clearly, Microsoft has become a standard for many companies in many markets. It differs, of course, I know, and this is different if you are in one market compared to another one. But just looking at the Nordic market, for sure, Teams has become a commodity for companies, organizations, and governments to make their work. So yeah, that has changed. Secondly, I think also just seeing, you mentioned Cisco and their booth, it's fun to see these new collaborative experience coming to life, because it's a strategy change, I would say. And I can't really comment on what Cisco's how they think about this, but just seeing that Microsoft Teams is a part of normally a competitor, but now also a collaborator in this space. So I think it's interesting to see where this takes us. But again, I'm very biased being one having the brand on my shirt. So Lars, please.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. If you look at a few years back, I've been in ISE for several years, and also being like part of the launch of Surface Hub in Denmark and the Nordics. And I thought that when we started with Surface Hub around 6 years ago, Microsoft did not have a booth at ISE. So it took them several years to actually understand that this was a space that they needed to be in. And I think also so from seeing that for just a few years, actually like 5-6 years, from Microsoft being ISE was a non-existing thing. So now like Microsoft having a huge booth, and there was a huge focus on Microsoft Teams. So of course, from different vendors providing equipment for using Microsoft Teams, but also trying to see new, regular AV people being like modifying their screens and projectors into 21:9 as a regular setup for Microsoft Front Row. So I think it's really interesting times, and also seems like the involvement in Microsoft Teams and Microsoft pushing the market to think new ways of working. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Sorry, Kenneth, please.
No worries, Robert. Go ahead.
No, but just saying, I think we will come back to, of course, the screen sizes and everything else. But just one reflection again is that, I mean, we certified vendors that build solutions for the room, like PolyHP in this case, having the Teams rooms on Android and Teams rooms on Windows. We don't certify screen vendors or projector vendors or a lot of other things that you use in your collaborative spaces. But still, they are using the Teams experience as part of building their knowledge or knowledge around their products, because again, it has become the commodity of having immersive experiences meetings. And even though you're not building solutions that are certified for Teams, you still use Microsoft Teams as the foundation for promoting and telling the story. And I think we'll come back more to the projectors and screens that we also had changed. The amount of having 21:9 was like 1 or 2 in the May edition of Barcelona and ISE Barcelona, but now there was a lot more.
Oh yeah, definitely. And one of the things that is also the outcome of seeing this trend is that you see so much innovation coming in the Microsoft Teams space, with so many vendors trying to push innovation within Microsoft Teams, and even, as you said, the monitor and projector industry trying to push something that is innovative in the Microsoft Teams space. I think we are looking at good times ahead. When you see from May until now, that's not a lot of times in terms of development and getting ready for a new summit. Even it's a short period to get ready for a new summit, and see the change and the shift. Because I imagined a lot would just reuse what they had from the latest ISE and just build a booth that was more or less similar, maybe change some small stuff. But there was no doubt that people have really changed and adopted to the latest and greatest in Microsoft Teams. So that was quite impressive. But yeah, as you said, I'm going to share again, because that would be my first topic, was actually going to be to talk a bit about Front Row. And one of the things that I saw, which was really interesting, is we saw it all over the monitors and LED walls. I took a few pictures and I borrowed a few from the internet, but there were so many vendors doing quite impressive stuff. And one of the things I saw that I thought was really cool, I was at a booth called Layard, and they even had a LED wall where it was integrated into a control center. So a big old usual control center where they monitor a lot of things. They made that space so it could easily be converted into a front row application, which I thought was extremely cool. And I talked to a different vendor who does monitors, and one of the big players, and they had a 21:9 monitor, and they said, well, we wasn't planning on having one, but we cannot be one of the leading monitor manufacturers in the world without having a 21:9 monitor. So obviously we had to find one and just put our logo on it and bring it to the ISE exhibition. And I think that says a lot about the push and the power that front row and that new experience has in the market. So maybe for you first, Lars, how do you think front row is going to change the meeting room experience and the market in the next couple of years? Where do you see the impact?
I think for the start, I will definitely see an impact in the higher end meeting rooms. So basically boardrooms, executive rooms, but we also see them coming out more and more in regular meeting rooms. And I think basically just if we look at how we used to work before, like we had a table with people sitting on each side of the table and then the screen in the end of the table, which worked perfectly fine before because we were used to having people in the same meeting room. There might be one or two remotely, but they were just like watching the meeting and not being an active part of the meeting. So what I experienced myself when I turn the table and then front the screen is basically that of course it will be easier for the camera to capture the people that are in the room and not like looking down a small area or like an alley. But basically also the thing that I experience is that now we tend to talk with the people remotely and interact with them instead of they're just there in the end of the table. So, and that's a huge difference. So, I mean, the technology is one thing, but actually just the way that you experience the remote participants does make a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I had a talk with, I partner up with a company called Great Meetings, and they talk a lot with facility in terms of how do you build a workplace to make it innovative and relevant in the future. And I said to him, well, I think it's a bit sad in many ways that we're diminishing the experience being in the room when we turn the table so everyone is facing the camera, because there's no doubt that when you're sitting opposite each other and you're talking, obviously that is the natural way of talking to each other. So as soon as we turn around and we all face the screen like we were watching a movie at home, obviously the conversation between us is going to be a bit less because we are facing. And he said to me something that I really took to heart. He said, well, as soon as you have a Teams meeting, it is a digital meeting. It's not you can call it a hybrid meeting, but it is a digital meeting. So why not make the digital experience the best you can? So it's not a team or B team. Let's have everyone on the same team, and that is what happens when you turn it around. So I really hope to see more of the front row experience, but also just seeing the as you said, the arrangements in the room being turned, so we actually have the experience when we have hybrid meetings that we are facing the camera. And I guess one of the things you can comment on this, Lars, is that will also make it so much easier for your technology to do all the fancy thing it can do in terms of picking up obviously the sound from the participants, picking up and framing and doing all the intelligent stuff. Because if you're facing the camera like we are now, it's so much easier for the technology to work as it's supposed to, I guess, compared to when we're sitting on the side and turning and flipping and sitting in front of each other.
Yeah, I mean, of course. So basically what we saw during the pandemic, everyone was sitting at home, fronting the screen, fronting the camera and the microphone, which was easy because then we were all equal into the Teams meeting. What we then saw when people come back to the meeting or to the offices was that it was such a big difference because people in the meeting room still just had one square, So there was a huge difference if I was a single person in front of my camera, or if there was like 5, 6 people inside of that meeting room. So that ability to actually front the screen and make sure that you are visible and all of the people in the meeting room are visible, that makes a huge difference for the people that we work with. So I definitely think that it will be a lot easier for us with a single camera to do it. And also just for the microphone perspective, when we're all fronting the microphone, it will be so much easier for the microphone to pick up the audio as well.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the last comments I have in regards to the new format is I'm a big home cinema enthusiast, so I love the immersive experience of being in a cinema. And one of the things that I like from the cinema is that they do everything to capture your emotions and to get you completely involved. So that's why we have speakers everywhere and big screens and all of that, is to make it feel like you're there yourself, which can be scary at times if we see a horror movie. And I think we all want the same when we are having a Teams meeting. We want it to feel like we are in the same room, that we are connected. And I think one of the elements I've seen with traditional AV vendors is that maybe it's not always with that in mind when you build a room. So when you go up in screen size, usually I see a lot of vendors, they go up to maybe 80 inch or something like that. But that means if you place a 80 inch in your meeting room and you're sitting 2 or 3 people rather close, you're talking to giants. Like, you're not talking to one in terms of size, and maybe you're sitting looking up because the people are gigantic, and then the experience from the remote side becomes worse as well, because then you're sitting doing like this in a meeting, which doesn't seem very connected. So I think the ability to get a larger size screen now, but it doesn't increase in size vertically, I think is quite brilliant, or horizontal, I don't know. But I think that's quite brilliant that we can get a bigger screen now without having that large torso of a human being if you're having maybe 1 or 2 people in the meeting at once. And I think it also makes it easier, as you said, if you turn the screen, that everyone can still see the screen, even though it's not mounted that high up. Because that's the second thing I think we see with a lot of traditional AV vendors, is they want that screen very high up. And that also means that the experience is not that I'm looking across the table and seeing someone. It is that I'm seeing them next to the ceiling, which I think we don't want if we want that engaging experience. So yeah, a lot of advantages in that. And it's going to be interesting to see, especially with the price point, when that is going to come down. Because as you said, we're probably going to start in the boardrooms, but hopefully the experience is going to trickle down into the normal meeting rooms. Do you know, Robert, is front row, do you from Microsoft, do you see that as only being executive room boardrooms, or is it something that you hope trickle down into the normal experience for everyday users?
Yeah, for sure. And if I just go back to where Lars was saying in the beginning, it's not only about technology, or I would say it's not about technology from the first point. I mean, because it's and I just echoing my dear colleague Jimmy Vaughan from the US saying, front row is just a layout. It's just another way to put the content on the screen, whatever it's 21:9 or 16:9. So the magic happens when you then use front row in combination with the furniture, with the intelligent camera, having a better opportunity to frame people because they're not sitting in the bowling alley view, they're sitting a bit wider, and then getting that into be a regular meeting experience. So I think that this will trickle down. We have started to see it in the perhaps more showroom ways for customer. I mean, you're rebuilding your executive boardroom, you're rebuilding these rooms, then you try the technology out and also the furniture and everything around that. And then when you understand how it works, when you understand how to make this a good meeting, then you can start making it a standard, not for all teams, not for all rooms, but for a certain amount of rooms. I think this will be the standard way of doing meetings, and having the opportunity also to choose what layout that the room will start with. And you can also fix that this is a front row layout experience and this is a standard layout experience. So yeah. I think, yeah, it's technology to some extent, but it's also about ways of working, enabling this work style, and it's furniture. And we talked about the banana-shaped table. That's like the table that everyone knows about. But I would like just to also highlight the triangular shaped or the guitar shaped table. This opens up the same way, but it don't really perhaps make the same effect of people in the room. So you're like facing both people in the room as well as the screen. So if you have a broader base facing the front of room screen, I think that is also a very simple way to get more interactive with the people joining from a distance. So I think it's simple, easy stuff, rearranging furniture, thinking on how we do meetings, and then start to experience and build out a tryout room. Have a room that you're trying out these things and going back and forth and have the insights from your colleagues and in your organization to then mix and match and try how this could be something that would then pour out into the organization and into the other rooms. So a long story short, yes, many times it starts with the boardrooms or the executive rooms, but when you find the way on how to use this, then I think this will be a commodity.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one point to that, because I know that there's a lot of people from the industry who's joined the meeting, and I think one of the points you're making now is let's get new furniture. Let's get something that is V-shaped. Let's get something that is banana shaped. And I know my colleague Marit in Sweden, she's a former interior decorator. She's so happy about this new trend because she actually used to design furniture that was banana shape and V shape back before the pandemic. So she's very excited about the trends now. But I think one of the main things I wanted to point out with that is if you're in the AV industry and you're talking to the IT department, the IT department has zero budget for buying new tables. So make sure when you have the dialogue with the customer, ask them if facility can join, because they are the ones who have the responsibility of the furniture, the chairs, how the room is looking. So make sure to get them into the meeting to get that new experience, because if you are just sitting in IT thinking you can rearrange the whole room, then I don't think you're stepping over your mandate. So that would be just my point to the ones from AV deals. And if you're sitting in IT, obviously the same. Reach out to IT, not to IT, to facility, and make sure you get a budget for new tables, new arrangements, all of that good stuff. So I wanted to move to the next topic, because obviously we can change how our rooms are looking from a layout perspective. But there was one thing I saw for the regular room, and that leaves me to the next point, which is the new hardware we are seeing. So I saw these buggers a lot at ISE, the 360 cameras. And I remember the 360 cameras from way back in the days when Polycom actually had them. I think it was called the CX 5100 or something like that. And I think it was later acquired by Microsoft. So I think that's a really interesting reintroduction in terms of new technology for the regular meeting room. So maybe Robert, you first. What are your thoughts around these new cameras?
Well, I think it's very interesting to see how this will evolve. This is new ways of thinking on where to have the video appearing from the room, how to frame people. We have the Yealink one that's more like a standalone. We have the Logitech and the Neat cameras that are more in combination, perhaps with other technology as well. So I think we'll see different work styles around this, and I'm very sure that we'll see also more devices coming from more vendors as well, and to see how this works. I think this in combination with AI, so that we have smart decision-making algorithms, making sure that it captures the best view of myself. That is the magic here. So if I have a camera, or if I have two cameras, it could be like a front of a room camera and also perhaps a center camera or something else, or just having cameras that sits in different places in the room. And then applying AI to that so that the camera chooses the best view of people. Then also this gets very, very interesting, because then we can have me facing this one and having camera coming from here. But then when I turn here, I will still have a very good view of myself. And now it makes it more like viewing a movie or viewing a TV show. But you don't really buy any specific competence or anything else, but just hardware and then the AI-powered software. And I think this will be fantastic going forward.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Lars? I don't know if you have any comments. Obviously, you're from Poly, so I don't know if you want to comment on Yealink has obviously introduced it together with a lot of other vendors. But do you have any thoughts around the 360 cameras in general? How do you see them?
Yeah, I actually did get a really good question actually doing ISE from another guy, and he was like, is this just to sell more cameras? And I was like, no, it's actually nothing about technology. It's kind of getting back to how we used to work, that we can sit in a room, we can discuss with each other, no matter if I'm pointing in this direction or in that direction. The technology will be able to pick me up from my best side. I'm not sure which side is my best, but but so it's actually nothing about adding additional cameras into the meeting room. It's much more about that ability to make sure that the people don't need to think about where the camera is. They can just keep their conversation going, and then the technology will make sure that they will send the video feed from the best side of that person. Of course, it will be difficult. I mean, we are not looking the same from each side. It's much easier to get that facial recognition because that's easy to recognize that this is me and this is Kenneth and this is Robert. But we are looking differently from each side. And the worst thing would be having 3 pieces of Lars inside of that framing from each side. So the technology will need to be a bit better than just facial recognition. And I think that will be the real differentiator of that person, that company, that will make it work really good, because we have done 360 cameras like in a lot of time, all the way back from Roundtable from Microsoft as well. And I don't want to go back to that experience, because that was more like the ear camera, because everyone was fronting the screen and then the camera was capturing me from the side, and that will not give a good experience.
No.
So it's much more about making several cameras work together, making sure that we can frame each person from the right side, and then send that into Microsoft, and then the power of IntelliFrame, making sure that we can send multiple streams into Front Row. I think that will be an amazing experience. And getting back to Jimmy, Front Row is just a layout, but people, when we talk about Front Row, they want to have that experience of people in each frame, making sure that they will be captured from the right position. So I think when the data of IntelliFrame and that multi-stream, and of course also depending on each vendor, getting that out to the market. But I would definitely think that will be a huge difference for the experience of Front Row, what people expecting from Front Row, even though it's just a layout. I think that will be amazing in the meeting room.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we talked about let's call facility and have them move the furniture around and make a front row in every room, and I think these cameras is, for me, the realization of that's not going to happen in every meeting room. That's not going to happen at every company. So I think this is the easy way to get the layout we actually want, which is we want people to be framed. So I think putting a 360 camera, framing people, and as you said, Robert, if people move, if they turn, then we still have them in the frame we want. I think is quite intelligent. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, because I think the first 360 camera I saw was back in 2013, 14 or something like that. I think it came with Office 365 back in the days, and where you had in the bottom of the Skype layout, you had the 360 view. It was unfolded, which was kind of cool, but it was a bit more of a gadget more than something that was practical. So the next topic I wanted to cover, and I'm going to share my screen again. I hope everyone appreciates me going back and forth with presentation. I didn't want to have PowerPoints at the entire podcast here, so I'm flipping it on and off. So one of the things I saw was also that we're moving into new spaces when it comes to Teams. So to give a few examples here, Lenovo had the new ThinkSmart, the personal device, which we see here, which is a device that is suitable for personal space, huddle space. I know, Polly, you had the P21, which I have been using for quite some time at my office. It has been a fantastic device as a personal device. Yelling introduced the P24, and Neat obviously have the Neat, I think it's called Frame, which is a bit of a different take on it. So it seems like one of the things that is coming now is that we are seeing us moving from just having equipment in a regular meeting room to seeing new innovations happening in different spaces. So maybe Robert, you go first. What are your thoughts on kind of the new devices we're seeing now?
Well, I think just making my personal reflection here is that when I go to the office, I do that like once every other or every 3 weeks. So it's very rare I go there. For me to go there, I like collect my headset. I have my speaker pack. I have a separate camera. I have like things for 1-2 kilos in my bag just for making professional meetings. Because if I go to the office, I don't want to take up a full 10 people meeting room and just sit by myself. So I think that is one of the trends that we're seeing. We need to rethink how we do meetings in the office, because still the office is very important. We need to have, I wouldn't say I need to have, but as an organization, we need to have a place to walk by and have a coffee and meet our colleagues and our partners and our customers. And that's how I use my office. I use it for meetings, either digital meetings on Teams or meetings with people that I know that is in the office. And I think this is something we need to find a way out, how my team, my organization as such. But anyhow, going from that insights that we have, I don't want to bring all these things. Instead, I would like to go into a room, close the door, and have my Teams meeting with people. And I think that's where this type of devices come into play. Minor or smaller room sizes, open spaces, things where you need to have a good experience. You would like to use the full Teams experience, but not use your PC to have it. And you don't want to bring all the gadgets that you need to have this professional meeting in the office. I think this is really things or device types that we will see coming in new ways and in a lot of offices going forward when we're rethinking. Do we need to have 50% of these room types? Is it better to have more of these smaller room types and then equip them with good devices? And instead of just moving into that and bring your PC and bring your headset. So I think it's about a change of behavior, actually. And these devices really care for that one. A good Teams experience that is friction-free and brings good value to your meetings. But because you will still have meetings that doesn't include all the people in the office.
Yeah. And imagine being Lars when he needs to go to the office with the equipment he has. It's not just 2 kilos.
No, the camera that he has behind.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
Just
what are your
have a
reflections,
fan.
Lars?
No,
do you
but
think?
I think it's a really good thing, because I talked with another one about, I think a few weeks ago when we had an event at Microsoft in Denmark. We all work in a kind of beta because we don't know what the perfect solution is yet. Not do Microsoft, because the really fun thing is about Microsoft that they're a tech company, but they always get the questions about, now, how do you do? What do you do with the employees? How do you set up the meeting rooms? So Microsoft also changed into a different role, which I think is really interesting. And also that moving the focus away from the technology, but it's actually about the people that we work with and how can we make sure that they have the right equipment to benefit and make sure that they can work. So I definitely think that we need to consider that we all in beta. We need to get started, get some ideas about what is working for me, what is working for this room, and then we need to be able to change it if it doesn't work perfectly for this room. So it's new times. We need to think about what works. We also need to get started and get the experience of what is working for me and maybe not other companies. And I think that added value of several vendors coming in with new displays for personal use, different size of forms and shapes, I think it's good. It will always push innovation, but it will also have a perfect fit for someone, and then another device would have a perfect fit for them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things I love here at home, I'm a technology gadget, and I think at least you are, Lars. I know you quite well. But what we're seeing in the home, which I really like, is if we go back a few years, you had a Bluetooth speaker, but then it evolved into being a Bluetooth speaker and an assistant. and then it evolved into being a Bluetooth and blah blah, and sensors and humidity and integration, and then it was your home hub. So you're seeing one device doing more and more and more and more things. And I think it's the same we're seeing now with the devices. I really like the idea of just one screen that does it all for me. So it's my second monitor, but it's also my Teams device, and I can also use it for recordings. I can use it for everything. And I had the P21, and one of the things I noticed was even when I need to charge my phone, the Poly P21, the bottom of it was a charger, so I could just put my phone down and charge it. So I love the idea of bringing more and more things into one device, both in the meeting room and in my personal space. And I think these devices certainly fit that. And I think the second thing is what I hope actually, is that we are seeing these units being used in different spaces. So I'm hoping for virtual reception at some point. So you use a Teams device as a virtual reception. You maybe use Teams at your gate, so you have a receptionist. So when you ping your phone, that you actually see a new gadget that you can use to use it as an intelligent doorbell for your reception. So I hope that we see much more of these devices emerging where we can use it. And I think the SDK that is in Microsoft Teams to create like a custom experience is definitely gonna help with that. So there was one thing I saw that was I think a bit interesting. I don't want to dwell a lot about it, but I think it was definitely worth a mention because we've seen the Android bars coming, which is an all-in-one product that does everything, and it's based around Teams on Android. But I thought just a quick mention. I thought it was really interesting to see Lenovo as being the first vendor who brought everything you need into one device where it was based around Windows. So I think that is going to be very interesting to see in terms of innovation, the new form factors of the devices on Windows. So I just wanted to give that a brief mention because I thought it was kind of interesting. And obviously, I know, Polly, you guys are getting the X70 certified now, which I thought was also really interesting for Teams, because that means that you guys now have a complete lineup of devices from the very small bar to the medium-sized and the big one. And what is the status around the X70? How close are we now to a release date for those who are sitting and in anticipation?
That's always difficult. Like Microsoft, it's not about time, it's about quality. So when we have the right quality, we will release it. So we have the Team certification for the X70 right now. So what we're lacking is the 4.0 software, which basically moves it up to Android 10, and that we are very close, I can say, but we don't have a specific date yet. We're still on track to Q1. I think it will be very soon. So within the next few weeks, but that's on me. Officially, we're saying on track to Q1, which basically means that we can, on Android-based devices, fill more or less every sizes of meeting rooms. So of course that will be interesting. But I also think it's to be open with Lenovo and their Windows bar. I think it's really interesting to see that we are kind of mixing. So we used to say like all-in-one, that was Android. Now we also see it on Windows. With our G7500, we also see Windows as a standalone or modular product. So we kind of mix those technologies. And to be fair, I think we should stop talking about Windows and Android, because we should more talk about what are the features that we need inside this meeting room. And then we can take a device and make sure that fits into that meeting room. So of course, I know that there's a small gap between Windows and Android. They're not doing exactly the same, but we see the gap getting smaller and smaller. I think we should actually just stop talking about appliance-based solutions instead of this is a Windows-based, this is an Android-based, because they're both very limited to being run in a kiosk mode, making sure that these can also be run as a native Teams rooms. And then doesn't really matter if it's a Windows-based device or if it's an Android-based device.
And I do totally agree with Lars here. And if we go back to the beginning of the Android-based solutions, it was called collaboration bar as a concept, which also then described how the form factor was developed. And today we're blending this, so it's more like a platform discussion, perhaps out of management. We as an organization would like to manage Windows devices, or we love to manage Android devices. Then that's our choice. As we're now getting to have more and more full features as well as full device form factors into both categories. So it's a Teams Rooms device. That's it. And then you choose either a feature set or how you would like to manage.
Yeah, I completely agree. And from a user perspective, I think no users in the world is going to notice if it's a Windows-based or an Android-based.
And even more shouldn't. With 4.16 software coming quite soon, when we're also then making the graphical interface on the Windows devices look much, much similar to how it looks on the Android devices, which then makes it even harder to detect if this is this type or that type, because it doesn't really matter in the end for the end user.
No, I agree.
And let's be honest, like 90% of the regular users, they just hit the join button and start the meeting, and they are so happy about that.
Oh yeah. I'm still trying every time I'm out now doing adoption. I always try to show people how to join with proximity, because I really like the idea of just walking into a room last minute, taking my phone and just joining from my phone to the system. I think it's such a huge benefit. So I love the one touch join, but in the fast paced world, I really love the new ways of joining meetings that is presented on Microsoft Teams as well, and even Teams Cast. I've been doing a lot of videos on LinkedIn on that. I think it's brilliant to just walk in. I know I have all my PowerPoints in OneDrive, walk in, Teams Cast, boom, and I could just run through my slides directly from my phone. So so that's some of the elements I'm also trying to teach with the option. So a few points here we have left to cover, and we are almost at the end. Also in terms of time, I see we have around 15 minutes left, because I think that was more or less it when it comes to devices. But I think one of the things that popped into my mind was when we see AV deals and we see IT talking to AV deals, I think one of the most important things I caught from ISE is we need to start talking about budget and timeline. And what do I mean when I say let's talk about budget and timeline? What I mean is we had ISE in Barcelona not that long ago. You mentioned that, Robert. And then we had ISE a few weeks back now. And so much have changed from one event to another, both in terms of all from monitor sizing, monitor aspect ratio, and from the Teams devices. And as you mentioned now, Robert, more innovation, more updates are coming. And I think one of the important things when you talk about Teams rooms and you want to build new meeting rooms is that I think it's more crucial now that you make sure in IT that you have the mandate to actually purchase the rooms that you need before you start a long process of investigating what is the right solution for me, what should I do? Because with the rate and tempo of innovation going on in Microsoft Teams, if you have a process that is ending up taking 6 months, 12 months, 13, 15 months, so much can change. And I've seen this quite often when in Teams projects that IT, they see something and they more or less narrow down to this is what we want. But the time they have the mandate and they have the allocated budget, so much time goes by, maybe 7 or 8 months. And then Lars, you come and you say, well, I got a new device to show you. And then they go, back to the drawing board. We need to test this to make sure we get the latest and greatest. And then they go through the process again. And by the time they're done again and they have the mandate and the budget, it's all over again. So I think one of my takeaways from ISE is when things are moving this fast, I think it's now time for IT to really consider when is it that you go out and research and when is it you involve an IT company or an AV company to get the latest and greatest and maybe get a POC going, and how long should a POC actually be going on before you decide to equip your meeting rooms. I don't know what your thoughts are around this, but that was at least my takeaways to make sure you drive an efficient process.
I think first of all, when you do a POC, you should consider what is actually part of the POC, because I hear a lot of customers that, we want to test it, and being like an AV reseller or IT reseller, whoever actually have the conversation, but not getting tough, but really asking, so when you do the POC, what do you actually need to test? What will be the success for you? And having that conversation, a lot of salesmen don't have. So basically, we just ship a lot of devices out. They might test it, but what is then the success criteria of having that as a approved device? And then, so I think we spend a lot of time, and basically also the organizations do that as well. They don't really need to sit down and think about what should actually be the end result of that POC. What will then tick the box to make sure that this actually live up to our standards, or what doesn't? So I think that could be an interesting conversation with the organizations to have. I think from budget, that's always difficult because the budget guys always want to have what amount of money does it cost, and they will always try to get that lower. And that can be difficult when you don't know which product that it is that we need inside of the meeting rooms. So again, back to we need to get started somewhere, but with a good consideration of which products that would fit, and then also be able to switch. I think that most customers, when they ask me, are saying, so when we buy this, how many years can it then live? And they kind of thinks back to the technology of legacy video or Cisco products that they have had in the meeting room for 10 years, not even updating them, just keep them running for 10 years, and that was perfect. But it was also really simple product. It was video and it was maybe content. So then with all the features with Microsoft right now, it's like we need to keep updating our products. We need to make sure that we have someone managing the products, making sure that we have the right software version, Windows version, and stuff like that. And that is so much more important. And that might also mean that we can't have the same devices for 10, 15 years. But then again, the products are also much cheaper than they used to be. And I definitely think that even though, like, if we install like high quality into the boardroom in 3-5 years, there might be different solutions that would fit that room even better. But then we will be able to take that equipment and then move into another room, and then take that equipment and move into another room. So don't think that we will lose the investment. I basically just think that we will need to reconsider each room depending on different technology stages we are in.
Yeah, good point.
I think this is a fantastic topic. We could like cover hours talking about this one, and I'll just make a like 2 or 3 short remarks. Firstly, ground your knowledge with the organization, because as we have moved, as we have changed, as we don't perhaps really know how and how we should work as an organization, get those insights back. We have a lot of insights from our partners and customers of how the trends are, but how does that correlate with my organization and the work styles that my team would like to have? Because that will then be a good, I would say, foundation for then how to think about meetings and meeting rooms, meeting spaces. If you have less than 50% of the workforce coming in regularly, well, then we have to rethink. So knowing that, I think before even going into meeting rooms technology, I think that's good. Start just defining your work style within your organization. How should we then continue? And there's no blueprint. It's individually depending on how my team and my organization would like to adapt. Secondly, I think, Lars, you're onto this. Building a Teams room does not cost the same as building a legacy video equipment room that you build for perhaps then having it standing there for 5-10 years. You can build a lot of Teams rooms for the same amount of money. And it will be a more agile process because things will change for sure, but a lot of things will be software. So you can adapt new features and functions to these devices, or you could see it as a modular thing. So you could change out perhaps one component of it and add another one, and then you can reuse it. So I don't think it's like throwing money into I'm not sure I say it in English, but in Swedish we say kasta pengar i sjön. You throw your money into the lake. I think you can reuse it, and you can also then change out components and then make a good investment of it. And finally, there's never been as good time as now to invest in meeting room technology, because you can have a lot of features coming, of course, if that's what you're thinking of. But the work style that we have today, it really cares for doing this in a hybrid and like outsourced way. We're not in the office anymore. So meeting rooms of the future, we're defining that today. And if you start somewhere, I think this is the best way. This is the best time to start doing this now, and then be agile, have an IT department room where you can mix and match and try out things, and have the people in the organization come out to try things out. We have it at Microsoft in Redmond. We have the Hive, where we try out new things and have the feedback from our teams coming in and then readjusting things. So use it as an agile thinking instead of a rigid 5 to 10 year plan. I think that would be good to go. Start now.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I was just thinking about, was it like 5-6 years ago when we started with Skype room system? Imagine that we kept that user experience for the next 5 additional 10 years. I think we have come so far with Microsoft Teams rooms, which also means the employees' expectations are higher because we want more and more. The more we get, the more we want. But I think the things that we get inside the Teams rooms today are so great compared to what we used to have.
Yeah.
I think you phrased it really nice. There's never been a better time than investing now. Robert, I will steal that phrase.
That's gonna be the closing remark. I completely agree. And I think working agile, like we did today with this, is the first webinar I've done. Just trying things out and see what works. The good thing is when you're buying certified devices like you have, Lars, is that you're following the Microsoft experience, and it will be able to update and all that you need, so you have the latest and greatest experience. And I will say my closing remark will be, when you are buying rooms and they are supposed to be used by the people in your company, make sure that you now consider, if you're IT, make sure you invite HR, because if you need adoption, it shouldn't come from an IT budget. The adoption, training your users, making sure that they know how to use the equipment, working in a new way, shouldn't come from IT. That should come from HR, because that's the people budget. And if you want to rearrange the room, if you want to make differences, use front row, make sure to involve facility, because they're the ones who are responsible for the room. So if you need to change something in the room, make sure to reach out to those guys. And I really think that's going to be the magic of the hybrid workplace, is going to be the collaboration between, it's an old phrase, but HR, IT, and facility, is to make sure we capture all the elements we need from the different parts of the organization to create that, and to make sure that when we bring in new equipment, that it is something that is going to add real value to our employees. And the last point, and I saw some vendors at your booth, Lars, is to make sure you capture the data. Make sure you see how the equipment is being used, how are the rooms being used, so you know if you need more rooms, less rooms. So I know IoT and sensors, and your devices definitely have sensors that can measure how many people are in the room and all of that. But even just in Teams admin, go in regularly, check how the rooms are being used. If they're not being used efficiently, do something about it. And if your users aren't happy, and it's easy to write out an email or grab somebody by the coffee machine and ask them, are you happy with the new solution we have? If not, then do something about it. It doesn't end with just an IT purchase. You need something to follow up on. So I think getting the different departments involved, working agile, and then follow up on the things you actually do. I think that's it. That's going to be key to make sure you're relevant.
So in regards to, and sorry for jumping in, regards to timeline, we need to think about, when is the project finished? It's not finished when it's installed. We need to add on like adoption, who will do the management, and then like the project will need to keep going for at least 3-6 months after the installation. And I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, I agree. So guys, there's never been a better time to invest. It's going to be the closing remarks. It's going to be the point of the day. It's 11 o'clock. It has been so much fun having you two guys in this, let's call it a podcast or a recap or webinar. I think you bring amazing insights. I hope we can do it again at some point. I hope everyone who has joined found it useful, that you have something you can take back to your organization. Any final remarks from you guys? No. Have a fantastic day, everyone, and talk to you later. Bye.